I watched a kid getting abducted in a black. I was 8, and going to the mall to the arcades alone. I watched this man with a kid on his arm, like he was asleep. Nothing weird really, but then I heard the screams of a woman saying that the kid was hers, and the man quickly entered his van and drove off. The heartbreaking screams of the woman, "That's my daughter. He took my daughter, help," is printed in my head forever. When I went home, my parents told me that there was various cases of abductions in the area and prohibited me from going into the arcades. The real creepy part is that before all of this, I encountered a man on my way to the mall that offered me an ice cream. He was sitting alone on a bench. I just ignored the man and kept going. When I was in the arcades, the same man approached me to play with me and started asking about my name and where I lived and such. I was completely oblivious of the treacherous situation I was in. The man said to me that he had similar arcades in his home and still had the ice cream with him, constantly offering it to me. Like you would not believe how unaware I was in this situation, paying more attention to the game than things the man was telling me. Long story short, the guy in charge of the arcades who knew me quickly recognized the fishy situation and started talking with the man. I don't remember what they were talking about, but the man left, and the arcade guy asked about where my parents were and if I could give him my parents' number. I lied to him, saying I didn't know the number so as to not get in trouble, and left to go back to my house as if nothing happened. Didn't tell this story to my parents until I was a teen, and recognized that I was inches away from getting abducted. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I lived in a quadplex apartment. Directly behind the backyard, there was a massive construction site. They were building about 40 townhouses for retired people. Me and my brother used to go into them all the time to explore. It was amazing to me, and I was obsessed with them. We would be there every day for the summer. One night, me, my brother, and a girl our age that lived below us were all playing outside in our yard. The stereotypical white van pulls up beside us. Dude opens the back sliding door and says, "Hey, you guys like those construction sites? I'm the manager down there. I'll show you guys around. If you want to, hop in, and we will go down there." I thought that was cool as hell, so of course I say yes. I get in the van, actually inside, when my brother, who is 2 years older than me, grabs my arm and pulls me out and says, "We should go ask Mom and Dad first." So we go and tell them, and my dad runs outside, and the moment the dude sees my dad, he takes off. It did not hit me until this year, when I realized that I was 5 seconds away from being trapped in the van and getting assaulted and or killed. This was in Minnesota, about 5 years after the Jacob Wetterling case. I don't think it was that dude's murderer though, cause this guy was scrawny, dirty blonde hair, and dweeby looking. 11-year-old boy outside town. Married woman recently separated across street hired me to watch her home and mow the yard while she was away. Husband was committed to a mental asylum for trying to blow his head off and missing with the shotgun. Drove him insane since some of it hit his brain, and he is now a sexual freak with no control over what he says, per dad. Go into closet and home while she is gone. Some type of deity worship witch station with porn videos VHS stacked neatly on ground. Looks like a sacrificial animal plate as well. Woman comes home, thanks me, and proceeds to give me my first blowjob ever without even asking. Just goes to town. Says it will never happen again if I talk. Then takes my semen and spits it into a vial. I think nothing of it, as I assume I am the world's greatest sex object. Does this every time I mow for 3 years every 2 weeks. 2 other neighborhood women in 2 house radius hire me and proceed to do the same thing. Pay me to mow the yard and then give me a blowjob, but never sex. Spit cum into little vials. Think it's weird, but again, assume I am God's gift to sex appeal. Idiot 11-year-old boy with 0 sense. Go into other woman's, single I assumed, closet. Same sex video and deity worship setup. Panic sets in. Open the vial of my cum onto the plate, with sticks of black blood-looking stuff with something burned in the middle. Find out husband took his own life too, 3 years before from dad. He thinks coincidence, but he's a drunk. Wake up on Saturday to watch X-Men. Raid on the 3rd woman's house next door, who also did the same thing. Blowjob, mow for her, but only did this twice for her. She is taken out in handcuffs. Other two women standing outside with black rosaries in hand as it is happening, chanting, with eyes rolling back into head. Both move in next month, never to be seen again, never speak to again. Be me on 4chan, trying to figure out what the fuck happened to me at 11 because I've never had the balls to talk about it to any living human. There are documents kept in Russian monasteries about demonic kidnappings tracing back to at least the 1800s. Children disappearing without a trace while traveling between villages, etc. Some were saved and found days later due to intervention of monks and saints and prayers of entire communities. Surviving children reported being taken by entities as fast as the wind and taken to cottages deep within the woods where they were chained up and fed by some sort of witches. Those that survived refused to eat. Anyhow, these demonic kidnappings were physical and real, reported by entire villages with living witnesses. Worth of mentioning is that those cottages were later not found by villagers. They apparently never existed in physical reality. Reports were kept in monasteries and never published. Some were found and released, but they remain obscure. Some of the stories are more horrifying than any movie, with boys being under demonic control for years, or presumed dead and missing. They were forced to obey demonic entities and perform various tasks, each day and night. But I digress. Point being, these disappearances today could very well be the same, happen in front of everyone's nose, and no one would know. Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of giant human skeletons in early 1900s. A U.S. Supreme Court ruling has forced the Smithsonian Institution to release classified papers dating from the early 1900s that proves the organization was involved in a major historical cover-up. Drop all your red pills and theories on giants here. On August 10, 1891, the New York Times reported that scientists from the Smithsonian Institution had discovered several large, pyramidal monuments on Lake Mills near Madison, Wisconsin. Madison was in ancient days the center of a teeming population numbering not less than 200,000 people, the Times said. The excavators found an elaborate system of defensive works, which they named Fort Aztalan. The celebrated mounds of Ohio and Indiana can bear no comparison, either in size, design, or the skill displayed in their construction, with these gigantic and mysterious monuments of the earth, erected we know not by whom, and for what purpose we can only conjecture, said the Times. On the 20th of December, 1897, the Times followed up with a report on 3 large burial mounds that had been discovered in Maple Creek, Wisconsin. One had been recently opened. In it was found the skeleton of a man of gigantic size. The bones measured from head to foot over 9 feet and were in a fair state of preservation. The skull was as large as a half-bushel measure. Some finely tempered rods of copper and other relics were lying near the bones. Giant skulls and skeletons of a race of Goliaths have been found on a very regular basis throughout the Midwestern states for more than 100 years. Giants have been found in Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, and New York, and their burial sites are similar to the well-known mounds of the Mound Builder people. The spectrum of Mound Builder history spans a period of more than 5,000 years, from 3,400 BCE to the 16th CE, a period greater than the history of ancient Egypt and all of its dynasties. There is a prevailing scholarly consensus that we have an adequate historical understanding of the peoples who lived in North America during this period. However, the long record of anomalous finds, like those at Lake Delavan, suggests otherwise. I've witnessed a Junjeti IRL. It was deeply unsettling. Scariest part is, it was just living in suburbia, in a nature reserve not far from a train station. It's true what they say about the witnessing curse. I caught sight of it with a friend. Within 2 months, his brother and my mother both died unexpectedly. We later burnt the park nature reserve to the ground. That was a few years later though, once we learned what it actually was. OP here. To those interested, the Junjeti is a pale-skinned, short-bleached white humanoid creature of about 3 to 4 foot high. It has either glowing red or blue eyes, depending. It is cursed and believed to live mostly underground. It crossed my friend and I on a well-established path, heading to the train station, although this path cut through a deep pocket of the park or nature reserve. As we came across it, it was standing on a natural granite stone in the moonlight, just off the path. I recall it screaming once it understood we had witnessed it. It was deeply unnatural and something that has stayed with me for many years. The screeching it made kind of echoed inside my head, and my friend confirmed the same thing afterwards. It seemed to affect my mate more than me. He became somewhat obsessed with the sighting for a long time after, constantly talking about it and reading up on Aboriginal lore and all that for a while. Came to realize it is what is known in our area as the Junjete, a kind of cryptid or nature demon. He learned this from an Aboriginal elder, somehow, after making the description to him of the creature and paying him with booze. I knew on some gut level what we had seen and heard was demonic some way or another, and I have since very much returned to my Catholic roots to cope with the experience. Years later, he came to me with all the information from the books and the elders, and we made a pact to do what we could to destroy it, to the best of our abilities. Hence the amateur bushfire. We cooked up a pretty good plan to burn the fucker out, for a couple of at the time deadbeat mid-20s fuck-ups. Basically, we started the fire from east to west independently and met in the middle. Never caught sight of the little fucker again, but once shit was ablaze, we caught the psychic screaming again, briefly. Then nothing. My friend thinks he killed it. I'm not so sure. It probably just went back underground. This was in SEQ 2006. When I was about 10 years old, my parents sent me on a week-long camping trip in the woods. It was not fun. I was 6 or 7 years younger than everyone else, had no interest in being there, and it was just generally a miserable experience. So one night I leave the camp and head to the nearby lake so I could be away from everything for a bit. I saw a white figure walk down a path, into the lake, and kept going until they went completely under the water. I figured it was a ghost and ran back to the camp to hide. Next day the police came along and shut everything down. Turns out, a local girl had taken her own life by loading up a backpack full of rocks, walking into the lake, and drowning herself. It took a while to properly process and all, but I later realized I watched someone die. I stood there and watched someone take their own lives, and all I could think about was myself. I've told this here before, but it's probably the most appropriate, creepy experience I had in retrospect. A kid in the first neighborhood I lived in as a child was found on top of a street lamp. He was alive, and firefighters got him down. No one knew how he got up there, and probably still don't. This post was not only completely smooth and unsaleable, but it also wasn't near any trees that could be climbed to get on there. The kid was hugging onto the top and crying and held on long enough to get rescued. Parents were investigated for child endangerment or something, but their story and clean history checked out. They were watching TV in their living room at 11 at night when they got a weird feeling about their son and went to check on him. They go into his room and he is gone. They searched the whole house before going outside, and that's when they heard him crying from somewhere. They followed the sound and found him on top of a streetlight a few houses away. Dad told me the story. Dad grew up in Mexico, ranch in the middle of nowhere. Family is dirt poor, so he would sometimes go up into the mountains to forage for shit to eat. He used to take his trusty dog with him, a little brown and gray mutt named Plomo. Dad is on horseback, headed towards the mountains, crossing over a dry flat desert with tons of cactus like Bic related. Rough terrain. He's taking a route he's taken numerous times. Daydreaming. Then his horse stops abruptly. Plomo keeps bounding up ahead. Disappears past some cactus and brush. Dad shakes the reins and tries to get the horse moving again. No dice. Horses sometimes act like this when there are snakes around. Dad looks under his horse. Nothing there. Looks around. No snakes that he can see. Just then he hears Plomo let out a loud yelp. Dad loves this dog. He instantly pulls out his pistol, jumps off his horse, and runs forward through the cactus, but he comes to a skidding halt. There is a huge hole in the earth, about 6 feet in diameter. It's totally blocking the path. This hole is impossible to miss, but Dad has been through here countless times and never seen it before. Hole looks deep too. Dad does not see a bottom. Just then, he hears his horse snorting and stomping at the ground on the path behind him. That's not a good sign. Dad can't see from where he is, but it's clear that the horse is pissed. It takes off. Dad hears it galloping away, leaving him there alone. Fuck. Dad decides maybe he should get a move on too. As he's leaving, he glances back one more time at the hole. Spots something on the other side. The brown and grey fur almost makes it blend into the brush at first. It's Pluma. He's dripping blood. His fur is all matted and slimy looking. Dad thinks it looks like something spit him out. Then Dad hears a familiar sound. A rattlesnake. Only this sounds different. It sounds fucking big, and it's coming from the huge hole in the ground. Dad is just close enough to still see down into it. Whatever he sees instantly triggers his fight or flight. He chooses flight. Dad tears back down the way he came. It's a good 5 miles back to the ranch. Dad is running at breakneck speed. He hears the hiss of the rattle behind him. Thinks he's going to die out there, but eventually, he makes it out the ranch up ahead. He does not stop or slow. He keeps going until he's safe inside. He won't tell me what he saw, only that it was something crawling up the side of the hole. Don't worry, the dog made it back with him. Don't worry. Don't worry, the dog survived. Don't worry. Don't worry. Dog's alive, man. Chill. All these stories about people randomly disappearing and no recollection of them ever existing joggled my noggin. Be in fucking university. Be real tight with this one chick in my class. She has a friend who's always with her. We all live a few towns away from uni, so we frequently travel together by train. Kind of an ass bae, so hardly ever speak to her friend, but she is always there with us when we travel or go get coffee. One day, her friend stops coming to uni. Thinks she probably got a job or something. A month goes by, and I ask the chick why her friend isn't coming to uni anymore. Literally hooing on. I didn't know that girl, lol. I see they must have gotten into a fight. Some more time passes by. Casually bring up missing girl to a few of my colleagues. Nah, I don't remember seeing anyone like that. Literally what? Go on FB to check our class group. Even people who dropped out are still there. Literally nothing. Try looking her up by name. Still nothing. And this happened in my adult life, not as a kid. Also, I'm from the third world, so we don't even have witness protection, so it can't be that. Be me, young kid at the time, maybe like 8 to 10 years old. Elderly neighbor who had enormous apple trees. Got the house from his parents, had been living in the neighborhood forever. Would give me a few dollars if I used this long wooden hook to get him his apples every now and then. One day after doing that for him, he invites me inside for some iced tea. We get inside, he gets me a drink. We are standing around in the kitchen, and then he looks out the window and stares. I want to tell you a story. Said 40 years ago, a bunch of people from high school came to the area to party. Their neighborhood was essentially one large circle, with hills in the middle of the woods, with houses on the side here and there, so people used the woods to drink and fuck around in often. Said one night he was watching this one group hang out, getting drunk nearby in the woods. Eventually, mostly everyone goes home, and it is down to 2 guys. For some reason, they start walking deeper and deeper into the woods until he can't see them anymore. He then said he heard screams, then absolute silence. Not to be cliche, but they were never seen again. Was in the newspapers and everything. Old man then just says, it was the woods that got them. Finish my drink, get my $3, and then skedaddle. Those woods were always pretty creepy. A few weird things happened around there. Wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't just old and crazy, imagining memories. Boyfriend at the time lives 2 hours away in a remote town smaller than the one I live in. He comes to get me on weekends to spend time with him at his place. Road between our towns is super remote. Barely any houses along it, and has no gas stations in the 2-hour stretch. Boyfriend at the time, and he had to pull over to pay. The stretch has no streetlights, No gas station, so you're pretty much fucked if you break down. He drove the car to truck pullover part, not sure what they're called, and got out and stood next to my open window facing away from the road so we could keep talking while he did his thing. He got back in the car, and I thought I had heard someone call out. Now, I watch a lot of spoopy movies, and something in my brain told me not to just get out of the car and start looking around for this noise. Now, the spot we had parked in had no houses nearby. We hadn't passed any cars in at least an hour, so it freaked me out a bit. I told my boyfriend what I heard, and he fluffed it off, saying I was hearing things. He goes to start the car, and I hear it louder. It sounds like a woman who's chain smoked her whole life, screaming out, "Help me." Boyfriend hears it too. Starts the car with the intention of reversing, so he could shine the headlights on the area the noise is coming from. I'm half out the window, squinting into the darkness, trying to spot the person. As the car starts, 5 people stand up from the tall grass, and a man yells out, "She asked for help," and a group of people start laughing. They were maybe 10 meters away and started moving towards the car, and I am freaking the fuck out. Boyfriend slams the car into gear and speeds off while I'm winding up the window as fast as I can. People run onto the road and after the car. 2 out of the 5 people were holding sticks, I think. Could have been bats. Nope the fuck out. Call police, and they said they'd send someone to check the area. Never fucking stop to piss along that stretch again. Be me, 17. Go on a backpacking trip over the summer for a school program. Me and like 10 other kids in Mount Skokomish Wilderness with a ranger and an intern. The ranger was a 60-year-old man, really quiet and kind of grouchy. The intern was some college girl pursuing a job like him. Hike and camp for about 4 days, not much happens. Occasionally catch the ranger checking out some of the girls at the camp. Don't think much of it. He only ever talks to the intern. About midway through the whole thing, we all smell terrible, but getting used to it, important. Late one night, really windy. I have my flashlight and go to take a dump in the woods. Go to latrine. On my way back, when I smell something fucking nasty. Like I said, we were used to the smell of BO, and this definitely was not BO. Start following the smell in the dark, tripping over logs and shit. Don't intend to go very far. Pass a tree, and the ranger is just standing still beside me like a statue. Says, "Pretty warm out, huh?" Just sort of stand there. He goes walking back to the campsite and says that the latrine is in the other direction. The smell is still fucking awful, so I pretend to walk to the latrine, but once he's gone, I go back and follow the smell. It gets really bad. It smells like really sour shit and vomit. Follow it, gagging, until I come across a little clear patch of ground. The intern is totally naked, sitting in a pile of her own shit, vomit and blood, crying, totally smeared in all of it. A few bloody, shitty sticks right beside her. She's just crying with her legs spread and sort of shaking. I ask if she's okay. She says yes. Ask if I can help. She says no. Walk back to camp, fucking terrified and guilty. The ranger is in his tent, I guess because I can't find him around camp. Go into my tent and turn out flashlight. Lie there for a while, can't sleep. Hear big footsteps walking away from right near my tent. I was near some trees, so I guess he was standing outside of my tent for a while. Don't sleep at all. The next day, eventually find her filtering water. Ask if she's okay. She says she doesn't know what I'm talking about and to go help the others make dinner. The rest of the trip, I literally could not get within 10 feet of her. She's always just not near me. She and the old ranger dude are really talkative. He's really friendly, compliments my outdoor skills a lot, etc. Hike out eventually and go to a ranger station/lodge for a night before driving out. There's an old woman ranger there. I tell her everything that happened. She seems very concerned and takes my phone number. That night I go to shower, come back, and find my room and all my belongings totally raided. Say fucking nothing to anyone the whole drive back. This was before Facebook. I've tried to look some of them up since, but only ever had luck with the intern, who I eventually think I found on a USFS website by pure chance when I was researching something totally different. It only had the first name listed, but the face looked right. This might not be anything, but I used to spend summers at my grandparents' house. Just me, only child. I had my own room with a bed and a closet on one side and a vanity on the other. This is kind of important. So, I used to have the same dream in that room. Not all the time, but frequently. In the dream, I'd wake up from my sleep. Where the vanity was supposed to be, there would be another door instead, like another closet or something. I always felt terrified about this door, but the dream always ended with me opening it. I never saw what was inside because the dream would always end before I could. Usually, I'd wake up feeling scared. Anyway, one summer, my grandpa died, so my stay was cut short. My parents came for the funeral, etc. It was closed casket because Grandma said that's what Grandpa wanted. Thing is, I saw him in the bed the morning he died, and he looked fucked up. His face was all big and swollen and purple like a plum, and there was dirt all over the fucking place. Grandma got upset when she saw me in her room and told me Grandpa died peacefully in his sleep. She told me not to tell anyone, and, because I was young and didn't know any better, I never said anything. To make things weirder, the night he died, I had the same dream where I opened the door that was not supposed to be there. Only this time, the dream did not end. I just stared into the door for a long time. Fuck, this is long, sorry. So, come to find out, Grandma admitted something to my dad on her deathbed. She found out he used to feed her sleeping pills. So, one night, she pretended to be asleep and killed him. That's all Dad said. No context or anything. Still scratching my head over all of that shit. I don't know what's a coincidence and what's actually relevant and all that, but I still remember that. I have no idea why my grandma would kill my grandpa over sleeping pills or why he fed them to her. Rural Louisiana. Spending the summer running around the country. Me and a few friends. Find an old stump. Becomes our new hangout. We set up a little fort made of branches and leaves and other things. Stump is totally hollow, and we start pulling out the leaves and branches that have accumulated inside. Come to a blanket. Weird. Yank it out. Little skeleton underneath. Not a dead body, a skeleton. Run home and tell parents. Never found out what became of it. Skeleton was small, and I was only 11 years old at the time. We figured it was some kid who got killed and stashed in the stump.